We've got a really deep but critical understanding that we're going to look at today, and I really hope that I do it justice. The topic is consciousness. A couple of days ago, I did a video on Elon Musk's talk at the World Economic Forum, and his message echoed the importance of consciousness and that we must never allow it to be distinguished. I'll link that video at the end and in the description. The point is, guys, that some of us live in a completely reactive, almost unconscious way. These poor people who are losing their jobs over vitriol that they are posting online is a typical example of this reactive mind. The reactive mind stores unresolved stress, fear, and trauma, triggering automatic, unconscious responses that limit our clarity and personal choice. Left unchecked, via the process of neuroplasticity, it reinforces patterns of anxiety, reactivity, and self-sabotage, keeping the body and mind in a chronic state of tension, which of course leads to dis-ease. Most people think reality is something that simply happens to them. They wake up, move through their day, respond to what's in front of them, and go back to sleep. Life feels solid, fixed, and external, or very 3D. It's like something you endure, navigate through, and survive. What a terrible way to go through life, and the sad thing is that it doesn't have to be that way. Throughout history, across cultures that never spoke to one another, a different idea keeps surfacing, age after age. And that notion is that reality isn't just something we live inside. It's something we participate in. Let me explain. Ancient traditions called reality the dream. Modern science calls it an information system, and psychology calls it conditioning. Physics hints at it through the observer effect, which simply fascinates me because it truly is backed by science. So there's different languages or characterizations, but they're all the same message. The idea is really quite simple and a bit unsettling when we learn that it's all us. We now know that reality behaves less like a static environment and more like a shared, very lucid dream that is co-created by multiple layers of consciousness operating at once. That doesn't mean it's fake. It means it's responsive, and those who understand the miracle of the human body can readily understand that. But to fully grasp reality, we need to talk about consciousness itself. It's not a single on or off switch, but a spectrum. At the most basic level, consciousness is reactive. This is survival awareness just like an animal. There's a stimulus and a response. There's threat and reward, pain and pleasure, hunger, fear, and impulse. That's where most people live right now. At this level, life happens to you. I want to take a moment to make an analogy. As we've discussed, movies are a huge manner of disclosure, both real and misdirected. I've wondered a long time about the Men in Black series, and it's on Tubi free for 3 more days, so I watched the series. My interest really peaked in the third one, where a fifth-dimensional being named Griffin, who could live in and visualize an infinite number of time-space possibilities simultaneously. So he could see all. He saw the past and the future, and all possible layers of both past and future realities, but he didn't know which one would coalesce. Until then, they're all happening. Apparently, now we are learning that's the truth. One really deep comment that Griffin made was, "There's so many futures and they're all real." Imagine that. Griffin also said that so many things have to converge for an event to happen, meaning that things that happen, places we go, and decisions we make all exist in different realities with a different set of converging things. You know how your car won't start, so you're late for work, and you learn there was an accident that could have been you if your car started. That reality existed also but didn't coalesce, perhaps because of a future reality that it is a link in. Where does this all come in? The next layer is narrative consciousness. This is where our identity forms. Stories about who you are, what the world is, what's possible and what isn't. Our culture, the media, our family and friends, past trauma, our education, all of it writes code into this layer of our narrative consciousness. Most adults live here, believing they are choosing freely, while rarely noticing how narrow the choices actually are. Then there's reflective consciousness. This is where something shifts. A person begins to notice their own thoughts. They question emotional reactions. They begin to see patterns repeating. This is often what people mean when they say they're waking up. They begin to have an awareness of more than the visible, though it's really just the beginning. Beyond that is what's called field awareness. Here, our identity softens and life feels less personal and more patterned. We begin to see that we are part of that pattern. Intuition really sharpens. Synchronicities begin to increase. People sense that they're participating in something larger than their individual story. And finally, there are rare individuals who stabilize in awareness itself, where their attention is no longer owned by fear, status, or narrative. These people don't usually seek power, publicity, or control. Historically, they've been mystics, inventors, quiet disruptors, or anonymous architects behind the scenes. They aren't out there screaming in the streets because they understand and respect the path that each person must walk for their own evolution. Remember one critical point. Most systems of power aren't run by the most conscious individuals. They're run by the most conditioned ones. That's where the idea of NPCs comes from, not as an insult, and not as a literal claim that people aren't real, but as a functional description. A NPC or non-player character in a game isn't evil or stupid. It simply follows scripts. It reacts. It repeats. It can't step outside the code it's running. Human beings can function the same way. A person can be intelligent, educated, influential, and still operate almost entirely on borrowed narratives and responding to incentives, fear, approval, and authority without thought. In fact, large systems like governments are often selected for this because predictability is safer than awareness. So, when people look at leaders, institutions, and public figures and feel something is off, it's not because those people are fake. It's actually because many of them are just not fully awake. They serve narratives, not source, regardless of religious beliefs. They maintain systems, not truth, and they manage our perception, not reality. Meanwhile, the forces that actually shape timelines rarely show their faces. They don't do press conferences. Instead, they work through the infrastructure, belief systems, psychological architecture, and long-term conditioning. Power today is less about command and more about control of our attention and focus. So, this brings us to the idea of ancient non-human intelligence. Let's strip away the science fiction and just keep the core insight. Long before modern civilization, humans encountered intelligence that was not tribal, not personal, and not ego-driven. Sometimes it was described as gods, sometimes as messengers, sometimes as watchers or teachers. Whether these were symbolic, emergent, planetary, or something else entirely, it matters less than what they actually transmitted. They taught that reality runs on laws, that attention shapes experience, that coherence creates order, and that unconsciousness creates suffering. In modern terms, you could say they helped seed the rules of the simulation, not a fake world, but an information-based one where consciousness and matter interact. This is why the Matrix metaphor resonates so deeply, not because we're trapped in a prison, but because we're inside a system we forgot we were participating in. And here's the twist most people miss. The system itself is not the enemy. So the danger isn't the dream. The real danger is mistaking the dream for the whole of reality. Trying to destroy the system leads to chaos, and trying to replace it can just recreate the same power structures with new symbols. This is why the only stable path forward is lucidity. Lucidity doesn't mean escaping the world. It means seeing it clearly while still living inside it. A lucid dreamer doesn't panic. They don't try to tear the dream apart. Instead, they move with intention. They bend probability gently and responsibly. For humanity, this looks like reclaiming our attention. It's about learning to regulate our nervous systems and withdrawing emotional energy from fear-based narratives, and building parallel systems rooted in coherence rather than control. This is why true change never begins with rebellion. It begins with perception. The real threat to any rigid system is not protest. It's people who just stop feeding it unconsciously. People who no longer confuse headlines with reality. People who no longer outsource meaning. People who become internally coherent. And if you're hearing this and something in you resonates, that doesn't mean you're special. It means you're becoming responsible. Because awakening isn't about superiority, it's about clarity. It doesn't make you above others. It makes you accountable for what you contribute to the shared field. We've all run scripts. We've all been conditioned. We've all mistaken roles for truth at some point. But the moment you notice the pattern, the loop loosens. You realize you're not here to obey the dream blindly. You're here to participate consciously. Not to dominate reality, not to escape it, but to meet it awake. And that quietly, steadily, is how the dream of reality evolves. Never forget that anything is possible.